Today I sat down with Anthony Thomas, who is very well known for his GameBoy Macro mods. Really, really cool mods on the Game Boy that allows you to play GBA games on a handheld that's basically a Game Boy Micro, but bigger screen. It's really cool. He's such a great guy with an awesome background. I think you're going to love listening to this podcast. Thanks a lot. All right, cool. Okay, Anthony, so you have to tell me what's going on behind you right now. I see a ton of arcades. This is where you sleep? This is your life?
It's not where I sleep. It's partially my life. It's one of my main hobbies, I guess. But no, I really like pinball. And there's a few other arcade machines around the room. I don't know if you want me to pick up the camera or something.
I think that'd be kind of cool to see it, but you don't have
Yeah.
to inconvenience yourself.
So yeah, there's a few others around the room. These are like Japanese candy cabs and a couple other pinball machines hiding over there in the corner.
Pretty cool.
But yeah, no, I've always been into old games really, and my dad got me super into pinball. Like he has an Addams Family and Frankenstein and a few other games, and whenever he'd have issues on those, I would fix them for him. And he's retired now, but he was a mechanical engineer and did a lot of work with NASA when I was a kid. So that's where I got a lot of my mechanical inclinations from.
Yeah.
But yeah, so working on those got me super into pinball. So as I've gotten older, I've slowly been collecting more and more arcade machines and rebuilding older ones. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you must
Actually,
have a favorite, right?
it's a hard call to make. So my favorite pinball machine is this guy. Total Nuclear Annihilation is the shorter one. It's actually a newer game. It came out, this company called Spooky Pinball. They're actually making a Rick and Morty game, but it came out in 2018, I think. That's my favorite, but in my opinion, the best game pinball machine ever made is Attack from Mars, which is on the end. If that makes sense, I have a favorite versus one that I think is the best ever.
Yeah.
And then arcade game, I mean, it's probably mostly nostalgia driven, but X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which is my first one I owned. I got when I was 18. It's in the corner. But yeah,
I remember playing that in the arcades. That's awesome.
It's a ton of fun. It started the whole Marvel vs. Capcom series of games. That was, well, I guess technically it was the first Versus, but I guess technically X-Men Children of the Atom was the first in the whole thing that followed that style. But that was the first Versus game.
So do you get into consoles? We'll talk about handhelds for sure, but do you get into traditional consoles?
So yeah, I used to be super active in the Xbox, original Xbox and the 360 modding scene, mostly when I was in high school, and then 360 was high school through some amount of college. I used to be super into modding them, the normal mods on original Xbox. You can install different firmware, different OS to run a bunch of emulators and stuff like that. But in terms of gaming, I'm actually nowadays primarily a PC gamer. But in high school and college, I was a huge Xbox fanboy. When I was younger, I was an N64 fanboy and Super Nintendo. So I'm still into consoles. The PS5 and the Xbox Series X look pretty cool. But right now, I probably won't get either of them at launch unless Demon's Souls Remastered is not on PC, and then I will probably get a PS5.
Yeah, PC first is sort of how I've become as well. I started gaming on an NES, and then eventually got to PC around Doom 2 time, and then I was just a PC gamer primarily for a long time. I think I didn't really get back into traditional consoles, not handhelds. I've always been into handhelds.
Yeah.
But I didn't get into traditional consoles until a little bit later. I think GameCube, which I also didn't buy at launch. I missed the PS1, the PS2, missed the Xbox, the 360. I was just, why would I need a console? I've got a PC. And of course, it's Nintendo's the only manufacturer I've actually kept up with because they make amazing first-party games.
They're more unique too. They're not going for just standard. they're not going for what Xbox, like Microsoft and Sony are going for, when they're like more or less making like AAA games trying to compete with the PC. Like Nintendo
Yeah.
goes for their own thing.
Yeah,
It's
and they
cool.
just have a great formula. I was just talking to my friend the other day about like the Switch. Okay, so the Switch can show its age if you throw on a third-party game that's obviously been ported from the PC, like Wolfenstein Youngblood. It's like, man, the Switch doesn't look too good. But then Nintendo releases a Mario game and it looks phenomenal. And it runs great and it's awesome. It's like, well, Nintendo, just keep doing your thing, man. I don't need Wolfenstein on the Switch, although it's kind of cool and to see it happening, but not fun
It's
to play.
impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely want to talk to you about handhelds. So right here, always on my desk, is an original Game Boy.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, my mom, I'll never forget, I begged for forever to get a Game Boy. I came home from school one day and my mom had bought me a Game Boy. And I have an older brother that I always looked up to. And he gave me a lot of crap for having a green screen dot matrix handheld, right? And he's like, you should get the Game Gear because it's color. So sure enough, we returned it to Toys R Us and I got the Game Gear. And about 5,000 batteries later, and I absolutely regret that. So I went out and I bought this Game Boy restored for like $80, maybe 5 years ago. And I just think of it as mine. Like this is my original Game Boy. It's
Yeah.
kind of in my heart. I just look at it and I love it, but it's not very fun to play anymore. And I know that you're deep into the modding community for handhelds, which is how we met, because I learned about what you've been doing with the GBA Macro, the Game Boy Macro. And I've been on a path to try to find the best handheld console for playing my classic games. So tell us about that.
So yeah, the Macro is it's interesting. So that thing, that mod's been around a while, right? Like you can go all the way back on like variations of it. You can go all the way back on like Mod Retro and like the Ben Heck forums, and see people like trying to make this work through like different mods, like different attempts all the way back to like 2011. And like I built my first one probably in like 2011, before there was really a formal name for it, because I used to be like super active on those forums. But essentially what it is it's a DS or a DS Lite. You can do it with either one. You can also do it with like the DSi and emulate. But you take the top screen off and you just got to do some trickery, which is essentially tricking it into thinking the top screen's on there. So you take the top screen off and then it boots without the top screen, and you the DS can natively play GBA games. So you just pop in there. And it's essentially a larger, in my opinion, like a larger GBA Micro, is what makes more sense. Form factor wise, it's just the most similar to that. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. And like what I did, like I'd made a handful before the one I made in like 2015. I built one in 2015 and decided to like make it prettier, and I did a little bit of work on it to find an easier way to make it. Which like originally the way people would make these is they would like tap into the ribbon connector for the top screen and try to find, there's these 2 points that you could solder to, that you just solder a resistor to, and it would basically trick it into thinking the top screen's on there and allow it to boot. So what I did in around 2015 was I just went looking around on the console for like a better place to solder those two, and I found these two very conveniently sized points like right by the D-pad, that you can like a surface mount resistor fits perfectly there. So I ended up hooking up there, prettying it up, and just kind of giving it a nice name. And the thing is, like when I made it, I wasn't making it as like a public, like a thing I was trying to like post online and be like, oh, look at this. I just kind of made it, posted on my Facebook. I was like, oh, I made a big GBA, funny. And then one of my friends posted it to Reddit, and then after that, it was just like a whirlwind of messages where people were asking me to like I ended up posting in the thread, and people were like asking me how much it costs and where they could buy one. I'm like, okay. So yeah, I ended up like writing tutorials, because it's like I can't keep up with this amount of people wanting this thing. So like I wrote some tutorials. I registered GameBoyMacro.com, and yeah, I posted them up there, and then I just like put up like a waiting list where people message, where I just took like very small deposits, and I would like get through to all of them. But that ended up getting insanely long, like that list, and very hard to manage. So I ended up I shipped the vast majority of them, and then it was like there was a huge drop off where because it'd be months before I had the time. So like I'd get to these people who wanted them, and they'd be like, "Oh, that was just like I was caught in the fervor of it looking cool. I don't really want it anymore." So like that happened too many times. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna go to like a system where I build them, post them, and it's first come first serve, and that's what I ended up doing, and
When
that's
did
what
you
I
move
still
to
do.
that system?
That was like probably the end of 2015.
Okay.
I went for a few months. It was like May when it first like I made it. My friend posted it. It kind of blew up on Reddit, and then like Kotaku and Engadget wrote a couple of articles, and like I was like, this is crazy. Um, and yeah, it was those articles really started bringing in people. So I I was like, I don't like I gave them my email address, and I was like, I should probably just make like a Facebook page or something. Like I've never been great at social media. Like I have a Twitter that I never use, but like I don't have an Instagram or anything else. So it's just like I'll just use this Facebook page, and that's ended up being where I do most of the like talking with people and sales and stuff through. Is like I have a mailing list, and I'll email the mailing list, and I'll post it on Facebook. But Facebook is where it mostly comes from.
Right. First come, first serve.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
honestly like plenty of people want to do like pre-orders and stuff, but like I'm not comfortable doing that because I'm just like insanely busy, and I don't want to take money for like an indefinite amount of time while I try to
Yeah.
make the thing.
Yeah. So how many, as you in late 2015, you switched to this other model, right? You're not doing pre-orders anymore. About how many do you make, say, every 6 months?
I probably sell like I probably make like I don't know, maybe like 50 every 6 months or so because they're actually pretty time intensive. Because like the way I make the shells, like when I first started doing it, I started looking into like injection molds and stuff, and it just wasn't feasible. It'd be like 10 to 20 grand for a proper injection mold for all the
Shoot.
pieces, and it's like if this were like a full time thing where it's like yeah, I can like do this full time and live off of this, and maybe, but it's really just like a side hobby. So I'm just the way I'm making them is chopping up like I import replacement shells, chop them up, bondo them, um, sand them, prime them, paint them, and I'm like super neurotic about how the paint looks. So like half the time I'll redo it like 6 times before I'm happy with it.
Do you have,
But yeah,
do you have many different color options that you provide to people?
yeah. I'm usually like experimenting with colors. But like I obviously like I you have to go for like my favorite one is probably the Famicom color scheme, which is everyone's favorite,
Classic.
which is just the red and gold. So like I do that. I have a purple, I have a blue that is very similar to the cobalt blue, and then just like white, black, silver. And then I'd done yellow and like green before too. But those weren't as popular, even though the green was super cool.
So 5 years into this, are you finding it any more challenging to find old DSs and DS Lites?
So I haven't bought any this year, and I finally went looking this year, and they are a lot more expensive than they used to be. Like when I started doing this, it's like they're like I would get them for like $8 to $10 a piece, like for broken old DSs. Because if they're broken, I'll just fix them, right? But now it's like I'm looking, and I don't know if it's because they're older or if it's because this mod has gotten more popular, which it absolutely has. But now they're like almost $20 a piece. Um, and I already try to like price them super low, and like I don't see myself increasing the price to account for that
Yeah.
because like I'm not trying to make a ton of money doing this. I just think it's fun.
Yeah. And well, plus you're bringing a lot of joy to people too, which
Yeah,
is
it's really cool.
pretty cool. And like, I'm, once I saw it, I was like, I need to get one of these, right? And your prices are super reasonable too, which is awesome. So going back to the broken DSs, do you find there's a common problem, right? It's like, oh, I'll just buy a broken one because I know I can fix it. Is it,
Yeah.
do you see like a common trend? Like it's usually this. So there we go. I'll fix that.
Yeah, the vast majority of the time it's just I mean, everyone probably knows this, like it's just the hinge. Constant opening and closing breaks or damages the ribbon cable. And if that's all it is, then it's not actually broken and it's perfect, because you just have to do the mod to have it run without the screen. But if it's not that, then the vast majority of the time it's just one of the fuses on the charging circuit. There's two fuses for that circuit and the power circuit that blow fairly regularly, and they just need to be replaced.
That's cool.
You can also just bridge the points, but I don't like doing that. A lot of people will do that because it's a lot easier, which that's fine. But then it's more likely to be damaged down the line if
I see.
like it overcurrent or something goes through there.
Oh, I see. Okay, man, you bring me back to college physics. Man. Okay, cool. So what should people know about the macro limitations to the console? Because it can play GBA games, but it can't play
Right.
Game Boy games, right?
Right. There's actually there was this there's this like fake mod out there for getting it to play original Game Boy games. That's absolutely not true. Where it's something along the lines of you just bridge a couple of points on the Game Boy cart, and that's totally false. It just gets you to break your DS. It was like a thing in the early 2000s when the DS first came out, and occasionally people will message me about it. But yeah, first and foremost, it's a Game Boy Advance. Like that's what you should look at it as. Which like the GBA was and still probably is my favorite handheld. Which is probably primarily driven by nostalgia. But I will get a lot of questions from it's like, oh, you should make it so it can do all of these other things, which it's like a lot of people ask me, can you add like additional, like add an analog stick or more analog sticks or second shoulder buttons, more buttons? And it's like, that's not really a thing you can do. And if you're looking for like an all-in-one emulation device, this isn't it. This isn't for you. This is first and foremost a GBA, and you can put like a flash card, like an R4 or whatever, something else in it to do some level of emulation. But if you want like an all-in-one emulation device, then like a Vita or the RG350, which is really cool, or there's this guy making these things called the MGSP, which are like themed after the Neo Geo Pocket, and his is like an all-in-one emulation device, and it's very cool. That is another one that has a long like waiting list. I think he does the same thing as me, where it's like sells them as he makes them.
Yeah. So you look at this as a way to restore a once broken DS,
Yeah.
and also it's pure in a sense, right? You're not really doing anything nefarious with it, right? It's not like, I'm not trying to judge people who do emulation, but that's not what this is all about. This is a little bit different kind of play. This is for people who want to keep playing their GBA games that they probably have a library of.
Yeah, it's to keep you from throwing away a broken piece of hardware, right?
Yeah.
And like if all you want to do is play GBA games, then like that's what this is here for.
Yeah.
That's why I like it.
Yeah. Do you ever think about future mods that you can do to current handhelds or handhelds that are kind of rumored to be coming out? Like, so for example, the 3DS, it's at the end of its life. Are you already thinking about, what can I do with the 3DS?
I have seen people do actual like macro style mods to it, which I think is funny. And like you can do some stuff on it, I'm sure. I haven't looked into that one too much, but like you can do some stuff to it to like emulate games on it, and I'm sure it works, but I've never actually tried it. Yeah, I think like there aren't really many current handhelds, right? Like the 3DS and then kind of the Switch. Like I've not really thought about much with the 3DS. I kind of think the Vita is the better candidate for that kind of stuff.
Got one of those right here too, man.
Yeah.
Got my Vita. Day one. I love that console, man.
Yeah,
So good.
you can do a lot of cool stuff with that.
Like
That
what?
and the PSP. Like you can do a lot of just like custom firmware driven things to it, right? To do a lot of like emulation and like custom front ends and things like that. It's really cool. Generally, if someone asks me about adding more features to the macro, I tell them to get like a PSP or a Vita. That'll do what you want.
I've heard about the PSP being a really good emulation device, and you mentioned it earlier. With the Vita, though, if you were to do that custom firmware, would you then lose the ability to boot into the standard firmware and play your Vita games?
I'm actually not sure, honestly. I think it still works, as far as I know.
Well, I'm sure eventually soon Sony's going to turn off the PlayStation Store and all that on the Vita. It can't be too far
Yeah.
away from doing that, so it won't even matter. You won't get any updates for it anymore, anyhow. That's awesome, Anthony. So, what else do people need to know? When's your next batch going to be ready?
Um, I've been trying to like, so hopefully the end-ish of this month is my plan.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the pandemic has definitely made it more challenging to work on them, right? So like mostly because the cases come from China, right? So that's been problematic, and just finding the time to work on them has been a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult right now with everything going on. But my plan is hopefully the end of this month-ish, I'll have some shells like finished and ready to start making them. But I also have to start sourcing more DSs, which is interesting. I'm
And
getting kind of
so
hard to find.
I have a link to your Facebook page. And then also, if people, which I can put in the description of the video, but also it sounds like if people want to stay in touch with you, there's a newsletter if they go to GameBoyMacro.com.
Yeah, so I have a like a MailChimp sign up thing. Every time I post about the new runs, like I'll also send an email, and I usually will also do a website like blog post about it. Um, the vast majority, like I would recommend the Facebook page, honestly. But like the email list, if you don't care to use Facebook, then the email list is also a great way to find out, because I
That's
do
awesome.
both simultaneously. So
That's awesome. Great. Well, hey, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. It's so cool to actually get to talk to you because I've heard about what you're doing. It's so awesome, and I think that the people who watch this will find it really awesome too. Thanks so much, Anthony.
yeah, and one thing worth mentioning, if you don't mind, like on the site, there's also tutorials. Like, I am very much of the opinion that like this is more or less open source and everyone should try it. Like, that's why I have the tutorials out there. And like, if you just Google the macro, you'll find like all these different variations that people have made. It is super cool and is awesome to see, because like with me not having as much time as I used to, it's great to see like what people are doing with it.
Maybe I'll try it.
Yeah,
You have me a little bit inspired.
not
I
too
think
hard.
we've messaged before about some of the things that I've tried to fix in the past, and particularly you helped me with an Xbox One that I was fixing for a friend, which was unbelievable, by the way.
Funny. Yeah.
In seconds, you sent me a link to a thread that had the correct process to fix it, and I had spent easily an hour Googling, the month before I'd given up, the first time I gave up. So thank you so much for that. But also,
Yeah, no
you kind of
problem.
got me inspired a little bit. I'm like, okay, but I've got some chops. I can do some stuff. And if there's a tutorial and it's a good tutorial, I should be able to pull it off. So maybe I'll try it and I'll videotape and we'll put it up on the site and see if people like it. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would like it'd be fun. The hardest part of it is making the shell, and but like plenty of people have come up with their own different versions of it to make it easier. Like one guy started putting like you don't even have to do a shell modification. You just started putting like an LED tube across and just
Oh,
lights
that's
that up.
cool.
It's neat. There's some cool
Cool
versions of it
idea.
out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. That's pretty cool. Great. Well, yeah, thanks again. And
You're
well,
welcome.
yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.